as you say, it really is chapters in a story arc, even though they're book-length chapters, to make that a possibility to keep. Marcia Muller, who I think is a wonderful writer, her backlist is gone. I mean, it's almost total. Of course, she had the same publisher you do, which is,
problematic.
Yes, they're not committed any longer to. They were when, as Mysterious Press, they were committed to it, but as a notch and niche, whatever.
Yes.
And either one, in Hachette, which is a giant conglomerate and focused on bestsellers. The backlist kind of thing, the older books just don't mean anything.
No.
But really, Sharon McCone, who's doing in San Francisco again what you're doing, over probably 24 books maybe. Anyway, certainly over 20 books, same situation.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to see a lot of that going on. I mean, we're actually in a period in which publishing technology and systems allow the kind of, it's almost like going back to the inception of book publishing. If you think about St. Paul's Churchyard in the 18th century, when the printer was signing up authors in the back, printing them in the shop, and then opening, the shop had an opening window, you know, out onto the street where Londoners would come.
Bestseller was 20 sold books.
Well, but I mean, they were basically doing a kind of mom and pop home printing, you know, in fact, I think I read, there's a wonderful book, I think her name is Alexandra Foreman, whatever. No, Sophie G. wrote, called The Scandal of the Season, which is basically about the actual scandal that inspired Alexander Pope to write The Rape of the Lock. And The Rape of the Lock was the first kind of mass bestseller, at least in poetry. He got rich and famous off, you know, what was in essence a tabloid publication. I mean, The Rape of the Lock in its day was kind of, you know, Brittany goes to court, you know, and loses a curl. But that kind of got things going. And I find it interesting that as we've gotten these huge publishing conglomerates, there are only 6 now, in which many things just can't be done anymore because they're not economical or whatever, that we're kind of reverting back to the splintering it back to the original model, and it's going to be, I think, very effective for a lot of people.
Perhaps, but then we will go to that word I used at the top of the hour, buzz. Because if you've got that much product suddenly available with the same limited number of readers, and these 6 entities that you pointed out, the publishing giants, are grinding out, what, 190,000 new titles every year, we're glutting the market with a lot of garbage. And then maybe you get these nice, really nifty properties buried among them. How do you sell them? Well, obviously, you have to look at your market, and that's where I became fascinated with the concept of the long tail, which is a book of that title. It got a lot of buzz when it came out, and you know, a little bit self-congratulatory as books go, but an interesting concept and an interesting process, and it certainly has encouraged me to begin to think in quite unusual ways. So, for example, since I'm my own publisher for the first half of my series, I've been known to go to a car dealership and say, since I know all these people, so many people in Vermont, I'll say, well, you know, I think that every time you sell a brand new Subaru, you should have a Joe Gunther book on the seat. And he, damned if he didn't say, yeah, I think that's a cool idea. And so I sold him 100 books. So go outside the market. Don't go to bookstores. Keep the bookstore accounts. But in addition to the bookstore account, try some completely unconventional venues. Doesn't undermine the bookseller, because more books out there, they'll go to you next and say, oh, you know, do you have this next book? Because I got this with my car. Well, you can't go back to the car guy for the second volume.
Well, that's absolutely true. But I mean, whoever's publishing the book doesn't have anything to do with that kind of viral marketing.
Well, unless he's me.
Well, but all I'm saying is that you can do that even if Poison Pen Press were publishing your backlist.
Yes.
The point is that this whole thing requires not only a different publishing model in terms of technology and distribution, but it requires an active author. It's no longer good enough.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I mean, I remember when I came into the business, Simon & Schuster in particular, I can recall, their sort of attitude, you know, Michael Korda, really, you know, wonderful man, was that if they published it, that was good enough. You know, if we build it, they will come.
They will come, yes.
And that is really because, as you say, of all, you know, the product glut and all the rest of it doesn't work anymore. So it does require an active author and some interesting approaches to marketing. But if you're not doing your own publishing, you have more actual time and energy to put into the marketing thing, and that's what Rob and I were talking about.
Right.
Was that if we took that work away, I'm not saying we're going to do it. I mean, this is, believe me, this is not my statement of a business plan here, but we really gave that some thought, because when I started the Poison Pen on Main Street in Scottsdale, right among a bunch of art galleries, there was a small space next to us. Well, there were 4 of us in this one little strip. And every year, it had a new artist tenant. And every year, they would come in, and whoever the artist was would have made a certain amount of art, whatever it was, sculpture, paintings, jewelry, didn't make any difference. And they would be fine through the season. And then they would run out. The problem was that while they were running a retail store trying to save the commission that the gallery, I mean, most of it was an attempt not to pay commission to a gallery so they could make all the money themselves. They didn't leave themselves any time to make any more art. So they would get to the slog of the summer when business goes down, where there wasn't enough income coming in, and they'd run out of product, if you want to put it that way. And so they would go away and the next guy would come in. Well, I've always remembered that, because the same would be true for authors to a great degree. All the time you're not writing, you're not writing.
You're not writing.
And that, you know, takes away, I think, the pressure on many bestsellers to produce a book a year and to do 3 months of, because now it's global. So, I mean, we have authors that come to see us, and that's part of their U.S. tour, but then they're going off to Australia and New Zealand, or they're going to fly to South Africa, or they're going to visit their Russian and their Italian and their whatever. Well, by the time you're through with all that, you have reduced your writing window from 12 months to 6, and whatever. So I do think that the artist model is one that I keep in mind. It's also true for small business owners. I think many small bookstores, many small businesses fail because the owner can't let go of certain parts of running the business into the hands of someone else. Usually it's managing the money. I have never paid a bill. In 20 years, I have yet to write a check to pay a bill for the Poison Pen. I am innumerate. I am not interested. I have always been able to hire someone to do the accounting and do the bill paying, because that's not what I'm good at. And it's not necessary that I do it for the business to succeed. And I think that has freed me up to do a lot of growth things. And I think that same thing is really true for writers who are being faced with the idea that their publisher is probably not going to do the support. There are fewer libraries, there are cut library budgets, there are way fewer bookstores. And I think you're absolutely right that creative outlets, niche marketing, car dealer, whatever tourist spots there may be in Vermont. Maybe you should find the big maple syrup outlet.
I mean, the list is endless. The opportunities are absolutely there. You just need to go get them.
I think so. What about, is it Montpelier? I don't know how to pronounce it.
Montpelier is the state capital.
Right, but isn't that also where there's a university there?
No.
No?
No, just the state capital.
All right, where's the school?
Burlington has the University of Vermont.
Middlebury's what I'm thinking.
Oh, Middlebury,
I'm sorry. Middlebury, M&M. Wow.
Yes.
Hello, scramble. Middlebury, because I know you did one book. I'm sure you did one book that was Middlebury, and I remember the campus coming in and out.
That's correct. I had a machine gun fight right through the downtown Middlebury.
That's right. Absolutely.
Put a lot of pockmarks in the facades. Yes. But what's your question?
I was just thinking that, you know, there were so many different microcosms in Vermont.
I see. Yes. So I go with that book. Yes.
Where you could do that. But I also was taking me back to your books, which is that I think your books have done a wonderful job in exploring these various, I mean, after 19 years, even though I've made a trip to Vermont, and only one, I feel as though I really know
Yes.
Vermont.
People tour Vermont with my books.